My upstairs neighbors taking turns zapping each other with a stun gun, hitting the floor, groaning in pain, and then laughing like Beavis and Butthead.
I'm pretty sure I'd like your upstairs neighbors. I'd totally let myself be tased at least once.
I've heard my neighbor giving his granddaughter a xylophone, for birthday, I guess. She could play it well and kept playing for a while. Immediately after she left, I could hear him trying to play something his granddaughter played. He practiced for a solid hour until he managed to play this song correctly and stopped with a joyful ease. It was one of the purest things I've ever experienced.
What a wholesome break from bad music and people banging.
You're only with me for the crack, my next-door neighbors.
I once said something similar to my girlfriend during an argument. You're only with me for my penis. She still won't let that down.
What can only be described as my flatmate having phone sex while using Christian Bale's Batman voice.
I'm Farbman. It's not the awards I received, but who I fap to that defines me.
Upstairs neighbors were a single mom and teenage daughter. They were very loud. The mom's room was above my room. One day, I had off and was woken up by sex upstairs. It was pretty common in the previous couple weeks. This time, though, someone came in and started screaming, "You're having sex in my iBed." Turns out the daughter had been skipping school and coming back to the apartment with her boyfriend. They were the ones having sex in the mom's bed. The fight that ensued should have earned both women awards.
I have never understood having sex in your parents' bed. Like, why? Don't you have your own bed?
I moved from far away, so I have a different state license plate than everyone else at the apartment complex. A couple of days ago, I had my upstairs neighbor drunkenly ranting to his wife about what he thinks I'm up to. He's convinced that I'm on the run from something. I'm just in grad school, LMAO.
I lived next to a couple some years ago, and they came home after a night out and started fighting about who was better at darts. I thought they were joking, but it got pretty heated. Doors were slammed.
I still don't know who thought it was a good idea to combine alcohol and darts.
I live next to a guy who took care of his disabled girlfriend. She stayed home with a nurse while he worked to support them and pay for her healthcare. Everyone really admired him for it. He used to get drunk and tell her that if she doesn't stop putting out, he's gonna throw her butt out.
Nice twist ending on that script, M. Night Shyamalan.
William, we do not hit. His mom was visiting. He was 30.
Poor Mom. I feel bad for laughing at this. My parents told me stories about the apartment they lived in when I was a baby. The lady above us was a classically trained pianist, and her music room was above my room. Apparently, when I would start crying in my crib, she would start playing in my crib, she would start playing, and I would go right to sleep. After my parents divorced, my dad stayed in the same apartment. A few years later, when I went to visit him, I was about 10 or 11. I got to finally meet her for the first time. The woman who used to play me to sleep as a baby taught me how to play the piano 10 years later.
That's obscenely wholesome. Sorry about the divorce, but it's still a sweet story.
Yesterday when I was taking a crap, my neighbor was blasting classical music on full volume. It was the most majestic and relaxing crap I've taken in a long time.
Holy effing crap.
Pre-dawn hours, blizzard outside, everything still and quiet. My roommate and I heard our neighbor on the other side of the firewall fart wet and deep like a stifled baritone sax, and exclaimed to himself in a twisted combination of awe and disgust, "Oh my God." We burst out laughing and hear him chime in with pride, "Did you guys hears that?" Vindicated that his fart was heard and forever lives in our memories.
This one is my favorite. My dad used to fart loudly in his sleep, and I told my sister it sounded like someone slapping a vat of butterscotch pudding. She laughed so hard she cried peed in her pants and woke my parents up. We were in our 20s, so it was kind of awkward.
An argument about money while I was doing the dishes. It ended with a slammed door and one of them on a piano, hitting the keys like a maniac. Some people read, some people go get something to eat. Some people go get something to eat. Some people exercise. This motherfucker relieves stress by going crazy on a piano. Lol.
The best is getting frustrated because you can't play something right and then just smashing the keys angrily. Really gets all of that anger out of the system.
I've heard and felt the neighbors upstairs having sex, and apparently they like to rearrange the furniture at least twice a week. My upstairs neighbors used to do the furniture moving thing. We both had studio apartments, and it was a huge mystery to me how they could move what sounded like a warehouse full of furniture for an hour in such a tiny place. I've been hearing Don't Stop Believing by Journey every morning at least twice for about a month now.
I woke up one morning in a daze, started walking down my stairs. I live in a townhouse/condo and paused and farted way louder than I expected. My neighbor next door started laughing so hard from her living room.
I once interrupted my neighbour's sexcapades with a rather gigantic fart. Jude was not amused, and I was treated to incessant doctor slamming for the rest of the night.
Our neighbours were once talking loud and I was nosy, so I put my ear up to the wall and realised she was reading him Harry Potter pretty enthusiastically, and it made my heart melt.
My dad's snoring like a bear and my mum's snoring like a walrus. If they argue, they snore out of sync, and if they have a nice day, they snore in sync. It's really quite sweet.
I read in a psychology book about sleeping and breathing and the impact of that in couples. Oh, romantic. Couple tends to synchronize their breathing. I guess snoring works too.
I actually manage an apartment complex where my office is surrounded by a one-bedroom unit. The building is old and the walls are thin. The tenant that used to live in the unit was a quiet man but would frequently sing beautiful opera music. His voice was amazing and I loved it every time I heard him sing. Then one time I saw him in the halls and made the mistake of asking if he was the one who sang these beautiful opera songs. His face turned red, but he confirmed that it was him. I told him that I always enjoyed it when I heard him sing and that it would always brighten my day. Never should have said anything because I never heard him sing again.
What a shame.
Couple upstairs would argue frequently. One particular evening, they had an epic battle. It was hours long. About 2 hours into the argument, 11 p.m. on a weeknight, we heard the woman shout, first of all. That was the moment we knew sleeping wouldn't be restful that night.
That was the moment we knew sleeping wouldn't be restful that night.
Season number 19, I think you're the worst, is how you wash the fucking dinner plates.
You're the type of person who doesn't wash the bottom of a dinner plate. I read it a long time ago, but it sticks in my mind. It's such a specific insult, but it says so much about a person.
My ex-neighbors never let their kids leave the house and preferred to raise bubble children. The older son, 12 or 13, was pitifully fragile. One day I heard him crying because he crapped on his own hands.
Crap on his own hands. Wait, what?
My landlord fucking his wife couple of times per week, she screamed like a porn star. They were on the first floor and I was on the second one. Sometimes if I'd walk above their bedroom and they heard it, they'd stop for a couple of seconds and go right back to Boner Town after.
I felt kind of bad for a previous neighbor of mine. A few times a week he got to hear my boyfriend plowing me like a cornfield. I did my best to be quiet, but was told he could hear the different positions. I was so loud.
That must have been an awkward conversation.
I could hear my neighbor fart, and when her phone went off on vibrate, it was like having roommates I couldn't see.
Heard my neighbors having sex when I lived in my previous apartment. Our bedrooms shared a wall. This in itself is not unusual. It was like, give me your effing baby. Make me pregnant, Daddy. Waking me up at 2 a.m. that killed my soul.
Years ago, I had an upstairs neighbor. At 2 a.m. every night, I would hear something sprint across the entire apartment. I realized 3 things. It was very fast, it took small strides, and it never deviated from its path. One day, I saw my neighbor outside and I said, I don't know how you have energy at 2 a.m. He responded with, Dude, I've been working the midnight to 8 I'm shift for 15 years. Doesn't bother me at all. That night, I watched him leave his house, drive off, and waited 2 hours. At exactly 2 a.m., I heard what sounded like 2 feet hit the floor in his bedroom, and the marathon started. A few weeks later, I see him outside. I tell him what I hear at night, and he says, That's strange. No one has my keys. It's just me and my rabbit up there.
More what my neighbour heard. I'm a deep sleeper and was an even deeper sleeper as a teenager. My phone alarm was going off for 30 minutes and my neighbours could hear it through the walls, assumed it was a burglar alarm, and called the police. Waking up to the police banging on my door was confusing.
Honestly, I'm jealous you can sleep this deep.
Well, I hear my neighbours having sex quite often, but a few weeks ago I literally heard a full-on divorce.
Maybe you only heard one of your neighbors having sex.
My male neighbor from India belting out Hello by Adele at the top of his lungs. It was magical.
I love when I hear people sing.